Betrayed by my own flesh and blood, thrown out of my home at 68, his hand cracked across my face, the sting sharp, but his words cut deeper. This isn't your home anymore. Get out. I stood frozen in the living room where I'd raised him, just 5 feet from my husband's casket, the air thick with the scent of wilting lilies. My cheek burned, but the betrayal was a knife, twisting through decades of love and sacrifice. Would I walk away, defeated, or would I fight back in a way he'd never see coming? Subscribe to my channel and let me know where you're watching from. Let's dive into this story together. My name is Eileen Carter, and for 37 years I'd called that house in Alaska my home. Every nail, every brick, every late-night worry over bills was mine as much as it was my husband Thomas's. We'd built it together, a life stitched into its walls, laughter over burnt dinners, quiet evenings by the fireplace, the creak of the hardwood floor we laid down in 87. Thomas had just passed, his funeral barely over, the chairs still scattered with relatives' coats and half-empty coffee cups. I was raw, grieving, my heart heavy with the loss of the man who danced with me in that very living room on our 25th anniversary. That's when Andrew, my only son, turned to me, his eyes cold as the Alaskan winter outside, and said those words. His wife Laura stood behind him, arms crossed, a faint smirk curling her lips like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. I'd raised Andrew, wiped his tears, worked double shifts to pay his tuition, loved him through every stumble, and now he was throwing me out like I was nothing more than an old tenant who'd overstayed her welcome. The slap came fast, his hand striking my cheek with a force I never thought he'd have, not toward me, his mother. The room went quiet, the low hum of mourning relatives fading to nothing. My face burned, but the betrayal was worse, a deep aching wound that no ice could soothe. I looked at Andrew, my boy, the child I'd carried through fevers and heartbreak, the boy I'd defended when the school principal wrongly blamed him for a fight in 5th grade. His eyes flickered, unable to hold mine, but Laura's didn't, her chin tilted up, her smirk sharpening as if she'd finally claimed the house she'd always treated as hers. She'd redecorated my kitchen without asking, swapped my curtains for ones that matched her aesthetic, rolled her eyes when I spoke at dinner. I'd let it slide, thinking peace was worth more than pride, hoping time would soften her edges, but this moment, this betrayal, wasn't just a slight, it was a declaration. They wanted me gone, erased from the life I'd built. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The shock built a wall inside me, solid and unyielding, holding back the tears. I stood straighter, my gaze locked on Andrew's faltering one. "Get out," he repeated, his voice colder now, calculated, like he'd rehearsed it. I saw something in him I didn't recognize, a hardness that wasn't just grief but entitlement. Laura's presence behind him felt like a shadow, egging him on. I'd given birth to this boy, held his hand through nightmares, patched his scraped knees, stayed up late helping with math homework. I'd worked night shifts at the clinic when Thomas's job was cut, stretched groceries to last week's, never once asking for a thank you. And now, here he was, rewriting my story, telling me I didn't belong in the home I'd paid for with my own hands. I turned, silent, and walked to the hallway. My suitcase sat in the corner, barely unpacked from the hospital visits during Thomas's final days. I gripped its handle, the weight familiar, grounding. My steps were quiet on the hardwood floor, each creak a memory of Thomas and me laying it down, of Andrew running across it as a toddler, his laughter echoing. I didn't take much, not the photo albums stacked on the shelf, not the ceramic angel my mother gave me, not even the quilt I'd sewn during Thomas's chemo days, but I took something they'd regret losing, the mortgage documents, tucked in my purse, my name bold on every page. I was no guest in that house, I was its co-owner, its co-borrower, its foundation. Outside, the Alaskan air hit me like a second slap, colder but kinder than my son's hand. Snow fell in soft, drifting flakes, clinging to my black coat, settling in the folds like a quiet promise. I walked down the driveway, past the car Thomas and I had paid off together, past the rose bushes we'd planted for our 20th anniversary, their thorns hidden under frost. The wind chimes hung when Andrew was in high school, swayed faintly, their song muted. No one followed me, no one called out. At the corner, I sat on a bench outside the gas station, my breath visible in the gray light, The teenage clerk inside, a boy I'd baked cookies for one Christmas years ago, peered through the window. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked, stepping out. I lied, my voice steady. "I'm fine, just waiting for a ride." He saw the bruise blooming on my cheek but didn't press. "Want to wait inside? It's warm." I nodded, grateful for his kindness, a small anchor in the storm. The motel room I checked into smelled of bleach and despair, but the heater hummed, and the bed was clean. The receptionist, a woman with tired eyes, offered tea and a blanket. I declined both, needing nothing but space to think. I lay on the bed staring at the cracked ceiling, Andrew's words looping in my mind. "This isn't your home anymore." That house wasn't just walls, it was my life. I'd scrubbed its floors, paid its bills, prayed in its corners, and I wasn't just a name on a lease, I was on the deed, the mortgage, every legal thread that held it together. Thomas had known this day might come. In his final weeks he'd handed me a brown envelope, his voice shaky but sharp. "Don't tell Andrew unless he hurts you." Inside was a supplemental will, a letter, and a clause that could unravel everything they thought they'd won. I hadn't wanted to use it. I'd hoped love would be enough. But as I lay there, the bruise on my cheek throbbing, I knew hope wasn't enough anymore. I wasn't broken, I was awake, and I was ready to fight. What do you do when your own son tries to erase you from the home you built? Do you fade away, or do you fight back with the one thing they never saw coming? Truth. I'd walked out of that house, my cheek still stinging from Andrew's slap, his words, "This isn't your home anymore," echoing like a bad dream. But I wasn't dreaming, and I wasn't done. I held the mortgage documents, my name inked on every page, and a secret my husband left me that could turn their world upside down. Would I use it? You bet I would. If you're with me, hit that subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from. Let's keep unraveling this story. The morning after I left, I woke in a motel room that smelled like bleach and broken promises. The Alaskan sky outside was gray, snow piling up in quiet drifts. My suitcase sat untouched in the corner, a reminder of how fast my life had unraveled. But I wasn't unraveling, not yet. I dressed carefully, pulling on my black coat, the one Thomas always said made me look like a winter queen. My boots crunched through the snow as I walked to the bank, each step deliberate, my heart steady despite the bruise on my cheek. I wasn't there to beg or borrow, I was there to reclaim what was mine. The bank was small, its fluorescent lights buzzing softly. Jessica, the loan officer, greeted me with kind eyes, but a flicker of curiosity when I asked for the mortgage file. "You're listed as co-borrower, Mrs. Carter," she said, tapping her keyboard. "You have every right to stop the payments." I nodded, my voice calm. "That's exactly what I want." I signed the form, a single stroke of the pen that felt like a sword. By noon, Andrew would find the locks changed, not by my hand but by the bank's cold, efficient process. By week's end, a letter would hit their mailbox, and the ground they stood on would start to crumble. That house wasn't just a roof over our heads, it was a testament to 37 years of grit. Back in 1987, Thomas and I sat at a wobbly kitchen table, signing the mortgage papers. His auto repair business had tanked, his credit a mess, so my steady job at the clinic made the difference. My name on the deed wasn't a favor, it was our lifeline. We paid every month no matter how tight things got. Some winters we skipped dinners out, patched the roof with duct tape, laughed through chattering teeth when the heater groaned. When Thomas got sick in 2012, the bills piled higher than the snow outside. I took night shifts at the clinic, cleaned houses on weekends, my knuckles cracking under rubber gloves. I never told Andrew how bad it was. He was starting his own family, and I wanted him to have a clean slate, not my burdens. Maybe that was my mistake, shielding him from the truth. He never saw the weight I carried, so he never respected it. Laura, his wife, saw the house as her canvas, painting over my life with beige walls and gold curtains, calling it her domain. I'd bite my tongue when she dismissed me at dinner, rolled her eyes when I spoke, acted like I was a guest in the home I'd paid for. I thought peace was worth the silence. Now I saw it for what it was, erasure. Back at the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed, my purse open beside me. Inside was the brown envelope Thomas gave me before he died, his voice weak but his eyes sharp. "Don't tell Andrew unless he hurts you," he'd said, pressing it into my hands. I hadn't opened it then, hoping I'd never need to. Now I tore it open. Inside was a letter, a supplemental will, and a USB with scanned copies of every mortgage document. His handwriting was steady, familiar, like a hand reaching from the grave. Eileen, you are not powerless. This house is yours as much as mine. Use this if you must. Clause 17b was clear. Any abuse or eviction by Andrew would void his inheritance, transferring everything to me. My heart thudded, not with fear but with resolve. There was something else too, a habit I'd picked up after Thomas's first stroke, recording doctor's notes, medication lists, anything important. That night in the living room, my small recorder had been in my coat pocket, meant for a prescription reminder. Instead, it captured everything. Andrew's voice, cold and cruel. This isn't your home anymore. Get out. The slap, the silence that followed. It was proof, raw and undeniable. I plugged the USB into my laptop, the files opening like a map of my life, mortgage statements, payment records, the deed with my name beside Thomas's. I emailed them to Megan, Thomas's lawyer, with a subject line, urgent, activation of clause 17b. My phone rang minutes later. Eileen, Megan said, her voice calm but firm, you've done everything right. The clause is ironclad. The recording seals it. Andrew forfeits the estate. I thanked her, my voice steady, and hung up. I didn't cry or cheer. I felt something else, a quiet strength, like the snow outside, soft but unstoppable. I wasn't just fighting for a house, I was fighting for the woman I'd been, the one who'd carried this family through storms they never even saw. Andrew and Laura thought they'd won, posting pictures of my living room, now stripped bare, captioned, "Our forever home." They didn't know the bank was already moving, that my silence wasn't surrender but strategy. I sipped coffee from a chipped motel mug, staring at the snow. They'd underestimated me, but they wouldn't for long. How do you reclaim a life someone tried to erase? When my son slapped me and threw me out, he thought he'd won, that I'd fade into the Alaskan snow like a forgotten footprint. But I held the mortgage, the will, and a recording of his cruelty, proof that could unravel his world. I'd stopped the payments, set the bank in motion, and now the house they called theirs was slipping away. Would they realize their mistake, or would my silence hit them harder than any words? If you're gripped by this story, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment with where you're watching from. Let's see how this unfolds. I'd moved from the motel to a tiny one-room apartment, a monthly lease with peeling wallpaper but a window that let in the pale Alaskan light. I was starting over, my suitcase still half-packed, my heart still bruised, not just from Andrew's hand, but from the way he and Laura had rewritten my life. They thought they'd erased me, posting photos of my living room, now gutted and redone with white walls and a cream leather couch. Laura's captions gloated, "Fresh start, our forever home." They threw wine nights, served charcuterie on the dining table Thomas built, acting like the house had always been theirs. I saw it all on my phone, each post a jab, but I didn't flinch. They didn't know the bank had sent a default notice, that the mortgage was in breach, that foreclosure was creeping closer. My silence wasn't weakness, it was a storm gathering strength. I sat by my apartment's window, sipping chamomile tea, the steam curling like the mist off the lake I dreamed of one day calling home. Andrew called one night, his name lighting up my phone for the first time since the slap. His voice was hoarse, cracked with panic. "Mom, what's going on? The bank sent a letter about foreclosure. What did you do?" I let the silence stretch, my breath steady. "You told me it wasn't my home," I said, my voice calm as glass. "Remember," he stammered, "I didn't mean it. We can fix this." I pictured his face, the boy who once drew me crayon Mother's Day cards now begging to undo what he'd done. "You made your choice," I said and hung up. I blocked his number, set the phone down, and felt a flicker of peace, not joy but clarity. I wasn't hurting him for revenge. I was protecting the woman they'd tried to make invisible. The house wasn't just walls, it was my history. In 1987, Thomas and I signed those mortgage papers, my steady clinic job carrying us when his credit faltered. We'd patched leaks with borrowed ladders, skipped vacations to make payments, planted hydrangeas in the front yard to mark our 20th anniversary. When Thomas got sick, I worked nights, cleaned houses, stretched 2 grocery bags into a week's meals. I never told Andrew wanting him to build his own life without my burdens, but Laura, she saw my silence as weakness, redecorating my kitchen, tossing my books, calling me a guest in my own home. I'd let it slide, thinking family meant swallowing pride. Now I saw it for what it was. They'd been erasing me long before the slap. But I'd kept every document, mortgage statements, payment slips, the deed with my name beside Thomas's. They sat in a manila folder, now locked in a safe deposit box with Thomas's letter and a supplemental will. Clause 17b was my shield. If Andrew abused or evicted me, he'd lose everything, and I had proof. The recording from that night, captured by accident on a device I used for doctor's notes. His voice, sharp and cruel. This isn't your home anymore, get out. The slap, the silence. It was enough to make the clause ironclad. Megan, Thomas's lawyer, was moving fast. She filed the paperwork, freezing the estate. The bank flagged the account. No payments could resume without my say-so. I didn't gloat or call Andrew to rub it in. I didn't need to. The truth was doing the work, cutting deeper than any argument could. At the pharmacy, picking up a prescription, the young cashier, a girl who'd babysat my neighbor's twins, showed me Laura's latest post. A boomerang video of Andrew hanging a sign in my hallway. Love lives here. My kitchen, my bookshelf, my life, repackaged as their victory. They're renovating, the cashier said, oblivious to the bruise I'd covered with makeup. I nodded, took my bag and walked back to my apartment. My chest tightened, not with anger but with a bitter clarity. They thought I'd slunk away, an old woman with no fight left. They didn't know I'd already sold the house. I'd contacted the Elder Protection Foundation, a group that helps displaced senior women. They'd bought the house cash, no questions asked, planning to turn it into a transitional home for women like me, women pushed out, forgotten. The deed transfer was final, the money wired. I didn't keep it all. I used a chunk to secure a small cabin by a lake, a place where no one could tell me to leave. I didn't tell Andrew or Laura. They'd find out when the bank's letter arrived, stating the mortgage was in default, the house no longer theirs or mine. I sat in my apartment, the USB of documents on my desk, Thomas's letter beside it. His words echoed, "You've been the glue for this family. Don't let guilt keep you silent." I wasn't silent anymore. I was a wall, built on decades of sacrifice, and they were about to crash into it. The snow fell outside, soft and relentless, like the truth I'd set in motion. What happens when the truth you've held in silence finally speaks? I'd been slapped, thrown out, and erased by my son and his wife, but I wasn't the powerless old woman they thought. I'd stopped the mortgage, sold the house to a foundation for displaced women, and held a will that stripped Andrew of everything. Now they'd face me, thinking they could beg their way out. Would I bend, or would I stand firm, letting their choices bury them? If you're hooked, hit that subscribe button, and let me know where you're watching from. Let's get to the showdown. I arrived late to the family meeting, my boots wet with melting snow, my tote bag heavy with the weight of truth. They'd called it neutral ground, my sister-in-law's house in Anchorage, but it felt more like a courtroom. Andrew sat at the head of a long table, Laura beside him, her pale pink blazer crisp but her smile brittle, like porcelain about to crack. Aunts, uncles, cousins filled the seats, their coffee cups and lemon cookies untouched, the air thick with tension. Conversation stopped when I walked in, my coat still on, no apologies for my tardiness. I didn't greet anyone. I set my tote down, pulled out 4 items and placed them deliberately on the table. The original will, the supplemental will, the USB with the audio recording, and a notarized copy of the mortgage agreement. Andrew's eyes widened. Laura's fingers gripped her chair. I sat across from them, folded my hands and let Megan, my lawyer, take the stage. She'd arrived early, per my request, her presence a quiet promise of justice. Megan stood, her voice calm but commanding. "Thank you for coming. I represent Mrs. Eileen Carter, widow of Thomas Carter. We're here to disclose legal updates to his estate." Andrew raised a hand, already flustered. "Wait, why now? I thought everything was settled." Megan didn't blink. "Please let me finish." He sank back, silenced. She held up the supplemental will, its pages crisp despite years in a safe deposit box. This document, signed and notarized in 2020, includes Clause 17b. It states that should Andrew Carter engage in verbal abuse, physical harm, or forceful eviction of Eileen Carter, all inheritance rights are revoked. Gasps rippled through the room. A cousin whispered, "Eviction." Megan nodded. "We have evidence of Mr. Carter stating, 'This isn't your home anymore. Get out,'" followed by physical assault. Hours after his father's funeral, she reached into my tote, pulled out a small speaker, and pressed play. Andrew's voice filled the room, loud and unmistakable. "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." Then the slap, sharp as a gunshot, followed by silence. The room froze. Aunts clutched their pearls. Uncles looked at the floor. Andrew's face crumpled, like he'd been punched in the gut. Laura's smile vanished, her knuckles white. Megan paused the recording. As a result, under the terms of this will, Andrew forfeits all claim to the estate. Full ownership, including the family home, transfers to Eileen. She turned to me. "You may enforce this or negotiate. The law is in your favor." I looked around the table at the family who'd stayed silent when I was pushed out, who'd never called to check on me, who'd seen me as a background character in my own life. Now they saw me, now they listened. Andrew stood, his chair scraping back. "It was a mistake. I was grieving, Mom. Please." His voice cracked, tears brimming. Laura opened her mouth, but Megan raised a hand. "This isn't a debate. The documents are in order." Andrew sank down, trembling. "Mom, I didn't mean it. You know me." I leaned forward, my voice soft but unshakable. "I thought I knew you. You slapped me in front of Dad's body. You changed the locks. You posted pictures of my kitchen, calling it your forever home. You knew exactly what you were doing." Laura's lips parted, but no words came. The room was a vacuum, every eye on me. "I was your mother," I said, my gaze locked on Andrew, "and you treated me like furniture." His head dropped, shoulders shaking. I didn't waver. I gathered my documents, slid them back into the tote, and stood. My boots clicked on the tile as I walked to the door. I turned back once. "I didn't come for revenge," I said. "I came with the truth. What you do with it is up to you." I left, the silence louder than any slammed door. Back in my apartment, the snow had turned to rain, tapping the window like a heartbeat. That night, Andrew and Laura showed up, soaked through, standing in the hallway like ghosts. Andrew's eyes were red, his voice barely a whisper. "Mom, please, we're sorry. The bank's talking foreclosure. We tried to fix it, but they said I'm not authorized." Laura clutched her purse, her usual poise gone. "We made a mistake," Andrew said, dropping to his knees on the worn carpet. "Reinstate the mortgage. We'll pay everything. You can come back, or not, whatever you want. Just don't let us lose the house." I opened the door wider, not to invite them in, but to step into the light. I pulled a folded document from my purse and handed it to him. "This is the deed transfer," I said. "As of yesterday, the house isn't mine." Andrew blinked, confused. "What?" Laura's voice was sharp. "To who?" I met her eyes. "The Elder Protection Foundation. They're turning it into a home for senior women who've been displaced. Women like me." Andrew's mouth opened, no sound escaping. Laura's face twisted, panic replacing her composure. "You sold it," he whispered, the paper trembling in his hands. I nodded. "It was never yours. It was built by me and Dad, paid for with my second jobs." My silence. "You lived in it, but you didn't earn it." Andrew's shoulders shook, tears falling freely. "I'm sorry," he said, but I didn't move. "I forgive you," I said, my voice steady, "but I won't fix this." I turned back to my apartment, my hand on the door. "I didn't keep the house," I said. "I kept my peace." What do you do when you've lost everything but find something stronger yourself? I'd been slapped, evicted, and erased by my son, but I fought back, selling the house I built to a foundation for women like me. I walked away from Andrew's tears, his pleas, and the life I'd known, choosing peace over their promises. Now, in a quiet cabin by an Alaskan lake, I was starting over at 68. Would I stay silent, or would my story become a beacon for others? If you've been with me this far, smash that subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from. Let's finish this journey together. I bought a small cabin by a lake in Alaska with part of the money from the house sale. It wasn't the kind of place you'd see on a postcard. No sleek renovations, no hot tub, just 4 sturdy walls, a wood stove, and a view that made silence feel like a song. The first morning I woke there, I stood barefoot on the porch, a mug of coffee warming my hands, watching mist rise off the water. The air was sharp, clean, carrying the scent of pine and earth. I'd expected to feel fragile, worn down by betrayal and loss. Instead I felt alive, rooted, like the trees that framed the lake. For the first time in decades I slept through the night, no dreams of slammed doors, no echoes of Andrew's voice telling me to get out. Just sleep, just peace. I unpacked slowly, one box at a time. I didn't bring much, only what mattered: a photo of Thomas smiling in our old garden, his hands dirty from planting roses, a crocheted blanket I'd made during his chemo days, each stitch a prayer for his strength, and a manila folder, now thick with copies of my life, mortgage documents, the deed, the supplemental will. On my desk sat the small black recorder, its single file a reminder of the night they tried to erase me. I played it once, Andrew's voice cutting through the quiet. "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." The slap followed, sharp and final. I didn't flinch. That moment didn't own me anymore. I owned it. I set up my laptop by the window, the lake shimmering outside, and started to write. Not out of anger, but to remember, to give myself back the years I'd spent folding myself into corners for the sake of peace. I wrote about the hydrangeas Thomas and I planted in '89, their purple blooms defiant against the Alaskan frost. I wrote about the winter the roof caved under heavy snow, how we fixed it with borrowed ladders and laughter, our breath visible in the cold. I wrote about the day Andrew was born, his tiny hand curling around my finger, the first time he called me Mom. I didn't write to blame him. I wrote to reclaim the woman who'd carried this family through storms they never saw. Then I opened the recorder, hit record and spoke. My voice was steady, raw, not polished but real. "These days, getting older made me invisible," I said. "But age isn't weakness, it's silence collecting power." I didn't lose a home, I reclaimed a world. If you've ever been pushed out of the life you built, you're not alone, you're not done. I sent the audio to a platform called Grandma True Stories, a place for women like me to share what's been buried. I didn't expect anyone to listen, but they did. Comments poured in, each one a thread connecting me to other women, other grandmothers, other silent rooms. I thought I was the only one. One wrote, "You said what I've felt for years," said another, "Thank you for speaking what I couldn't." My story became a chorus, a quiet army of women who'd been dismissed but had everything left to say. I recorded more, sharing the small moments, the way Thomas whispered, "We built this together," when we planted our first garden, the nights I counted pennies to keep the lights on, the day I walked away from Andrew's tears, choosing my peace over his regret. Each recording was a brick, building a new home, not of walls but of truth. The cabin's silence wasn't empty anymore, it was full, alive with the voices of women who'd found me, and I'd found them. I still live in that cabin, waking with the light, sipping coffee slow, letting the peace linger. Sometimes I think of Andrew, of the house, of what could have been, but I don't dwell. The house was walls, wood and memories, but what I gained was stronger. Truth doesn't rot, doesn't fade, it waits, and when it speaks it doesn't shout, it just doesn't stop. I forgave Andrew, not for him but for me, to let go of the weight. I don't know where he and Laura are now, whether they're rebuilding or still reeling. I didn't call, didn't check. My life is here, in the quiet, where no one can tell me to leave. The Elder Protection Foundation turned the house into a haven, a place where women like me find safety, a reminder that my choice mattered. If you've ever been hurt by the people who were supposed to protect you, know this: silence isn't surrender, it's preparation. You're not invisible, not powerless. Your story, like mine, can be a light for someone else. I'm 68, living by a lake, speaking truths I once swallowed. I lost a house but found a world. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories, share your own voice, and let's keep telling the stories they forgot we knew. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment and let's build this community together, one truth at a time.